Hey guys, welcome to RW Woodworks. My name is Raheem, and in this video, we continue my dream shop build and install a couple of cabinets on top of the miter station. Now the one on the right is normal cabinetry that allows storage, etc. Whereas the one on the left is a little interesting because it's not a normal carcass, and you'll see how I built it in the video, but it's there to just protect the electrical system behind it so that there's no dust getting there. Now, without further ado, let's roll that intro and let's get right into it. Dimensions confirmed, I used cutlistoptimizer.com to generate the cut list for the 2 sheets of plywood required for this project. Now I cheated a bit and got our friends at the big box stores to rough cut the sheets so that it would all fit in my car. But whenever I get the big box stores to cut the plywood, I always take painter's tape with me and do the pre-dimensional taping before they run the saw on the plywood. This always ensures I get lesser tear out. At any rate, I still needed to cut down the pieces down to their final dimensions, which I did over at the table saw and then after on the miter station. Unsure if you saw my dust collection upgrade on my miter station video? I'll put a link in the description, but my goodness, what a difference. With all the pieces cut to size, I told my wife I needed to iron some clothes and snuck the iron down to the workshop to install the edge bending on all the front facing plywood. There's a couple of major ways to do edge bending. One is to cut slim strips of hardwood to put on the edge of the plywood. And the other, as I'm doing here, is to purchase a roll of thin veneer that is pre-glued already. It's really as simple as putting the veneer on and using heat, which is provided by the iron here, to stick the edge bending to the plywood. The key to getting a good bond is allowing the veneer time to dry onto the plywood. Once I noticed I had a good bond, I used a blade to cut the excess and then used a double-sided trimmer, and that got it flush to the trim. A little sanding on the edges and it was ready to paint. With the edge bending complete and a little sanding across all the plywood, it was ready to start painting. Now those little blue dots that you see are little pieces of painter's tape that lets me know where all I need to put paint. And since I'm prone to mistakes, I went ahead and added painter's tape to ensure I didn't bleed into the areas where I didn't want the paint to go. Excess painter's tape also needs to be removed, and yes, so satisfying. It's finally time to paint, but before we get the actual paint on, it's important to get primer. Now I mentioned this in a prior video, but if you're doing a dark color, it is the best to use black colored primer. If you don't believe me or if you're shocked, just wait till I put the paint on and you'll see what I mean. The blue color that I'm planning on painting is really gonna pop because of the black colored primer. And finally, it's time to get the paint on. Boy, I really love this blue color. And look at the way it pops. Don't you agree? Now, if you're a newbie to painting the way I am, I highly recommend you get paint that's self-leveling. Even if you have an uneven coat, it will ensure the level and you won't get blobs. Alright guys, you're in it for the good and the bad, and there's an epic fail incoming here. No matter the kind of paint you get, self-leveling or not, if you can't stroke the roller properly, you could potentially mess up your complete project. Watch what happens here. Boy, I got so lucky here. I don't know how the paint didn't run down the plywood. I got so lucky. But you should always be careful when you're painting the edges to ensure it doesn't fall over. With that near catastrophic fiasco out of the way, it was time to take the painter's tape off and start putting joinery to get this carcass together. The best joinery method for carcasses is pocket screws. By the way, didn't have enough of me once. Here's two different angles. With all the pocket holes drilled, it was time to put the frame together. Using a 90-degree jig really helps to ensure you keep square when creating a frame. When you're building two cabinets, what happens to one side happens to the other. Here I am putting the second frame together, and with the magic of YouTube, the second frame is complete. The next day I came in and started working on the cabinet doors. Now the one thing that's really important to learn about woodworking is that you don't always have to completely stick to your cut list. My cut list might say one thing, but when I put the door, it might not look right. And the look is everything. And therefore, I am now cutting the doors to the exact size required to fit the carcass that I already built. With the doors cut to size, it was now time to install the hinges. I'm here using a Kreg jig to install the hinges. It comes with this blue platform that you can use to measure from the base and from the top. And then it also comes with a Forstner bit that allows you to drill the precise hole required to install the hinge. With the hinges installed on the doors, it was time to now find out where the corresponding screws would go in the carcass to hold the hinge. That is as simple as taking the door and placing it against the carcass and using a pencil to mark where the screws are going to go. A quick pre-drill and a screw and we're good to go. It is satisfying to see a project come together. With all the other hinges installed, I wanted to give you a little bit of a deeper understanding on how I did this on the right side. I used 3 hinges and a piano hinge in the middle to ensure that it would hold the weight of 2 doors. Also, the right frame will get screwed directly into the wall, whereas the left is going to be hung using French cleats and does need a back panel. So back again to that same concept, I'm not using my dimensions on my cut list, rather cutting it to size based on the size of the carcass. Oh, the pains of a small workshop. No worries, I'm glad my table saw is on wheels and my centipede workbench can get set up in a moment's notice. With the back panel cut to side, it was time to install it. Installing it is once again pocket screws. I used quite a few, 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, and a couple on the sides just to make sure it was stiff and it was protected. Also, you'll notice I used a piece of wood in the back to ensure that the back panel was inset. This allows the cabinet to be flush against the wall when it's put up with the French cleats. More on that in just a minute. What happens to one must happen to the other. Here I am installing the back panel for the larger cabinet. This one needed a little bit more persuasion, so I got my foreman, my son, to come in and hold the back as I screwed it in. Worked out pretty well. He didn't give me more than a minute of his time, but really that's all I needed. Now if you're anything like me, getting someone to help you hold heavy things is near impossible, if not actually impossible. Nonetheless, I propped the cabinet up using a bunch of pieces of plywood, and then in the end, when I just needed to raise it up a little bit more and level it out, I used these little shims. Worked out really well. Held it in place while I screwed it into the wall. Now these are getting screwed in directly to the studs. I have no worry about the weight distribution here. It is going to hold up really strong. With the frame on, just clip in the hinges for the doors and we got ourselves a cabinet. Now, like I mentioned before, the other cabinets are going to go up using French cleats. Now, French cleats is a method of mounting an object on a vertical wall using 2 45-degree angles.
Now, instead of taking time to explain all of what French cleats are and do, I'm going to put a link in the video description below from The Honest Carpenter, an amazing YouTube channel that you really should check out for other carpentry information. But he will take 5 minutes to explain to you everything there is to know about French cleats. With the cabinets up on the wall and me being at the home stretch of this project, I used my Kreg jig to install the door handles. Now these are the same handles that I used on the bottom, and I love the way they look, but they're vertical instead of horizontal. That's as simple as putting the jig sideways and installing. Now if you need help learning how to install door pulls, I'll put a link in the video description below to one of my own videos that'll help you learn that.
Oh, hey guys. Well, there you have it. 2 cabinetries ready to go. Hope you guys learned something from it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you think I deserve it, please give this video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe, because I got lots more videos in the upcoming months. At any rate, thanks for joining me. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.